bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good morning, Birds fans. It is a Thursday get-together here on Birds 365 with your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen, Jody McDonald. We got two good guests coming your way. We'll give you details on that in just a second. We got a game coming your way on Sunday. Got to fly to the West Coast to take on the Rams, and we'll get into that matchup as well. But first things first, like John McMullen, who travels over the bridge to South Philadelphia often to get his Eagles work in. I did the same last night to watch the Phillies get some work in, eliminating the Florida Marlins, Miami Marlins, the fish, call them whatever you want. What they are this morning is a dead fish. After the Phillies swept them out in 2 games, easy victory last night, 7-1. They're dueling aces. And yeah, I get to pat myself on the back a little bit here because I've been calling Aaron Nola an ace for years. And he didn't pitch like an ace this year. I got to give it up. Can't fake it, can't hide it. ERA well over 4. That's not ace-like status. Oh, he looked like an ace last night. Johnny Mack, he was just stone cold dominant. Off-speed stuff, knuckle curves. He went heavy to the knuckle curve last night. So I was in the house, and you got to give it up for Phillies fans. When the Phillies are in important games, mostly playoffs, but even good late regular season games, they can rock Citizens Bank Park like I would say any other stadium in all of baseball. It's borderline football-like. And we know the NFL gets more jacked up than any other sport, but it feels like you're at a football game when you're at a Phillies playoff game.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger advantage for the Phillies, too, than the Eagles because football players are used to dealing with it. It's a huge advantage for the Eagles, but football players go into horrible environments all the time. They're kind of used to, at least more used. It's not fun, but they're more used to it. And you've seen what home field advantage has meant to the Eagles in their 2 recent runs to the Super Bowl. So it's very, very meaningful. But I think it's even more meaningful in baseball because those guys aren't used to it. And they really get rattled. I'm talking about the players, the opposing players. They really get rattled by it, I think, more than not that NFL players can't, again, it's shown up in the past, but I think it's just, it's a bigger disparagement from baseball to football because they come in here and they're like, what the heck is this? And it's a huge advantage for the Phillies and they've taken advantage of it, last season, this season already. They're up against it, talent wise against in the next series, but I don't think Atlanta wants to come here. They better get it done down there. You better take advantage of your situation. And the Phillies, by the way, you'll be able to see it because Atlanta is not going to be like Philadelphia. It's not.
What do you mean by that?
The
difference between the 2 parks.
Yes.
They got a good crowd. I'll give it last.
It'll be better because it's the playoffs and everybody gets amped up in the playoffs. But it's not going to be like it is. It's going to be easier for the Phillies down there than it is for Atlanta up here. Is
Well,
all
you
I'm
have the
trying to say.
Phillies who are here as far as crowd reaction, home attendance, loudness in the ballpark, and then you have the Tampa Rays. They had 19,000
Yeah.
people for their
Well,
first playoff game.
that's a Yankees town.
That
You know.
that's just barely over half full for a playoff game. You couldn't get tickets. I did this the other day on the air on CBS, ESPN. When they put their schedule out, they give you the team, the pitching matchup, the time, the broadcast outlet, and then the last column is tickets available. So they got to deal with some secondary market. It could have been StubHub.
Yeah.
I don't even know who it is. But they give you the least expensive price for a ticket that you can get on the secondary market. The Rays were like $11.
Yeah.
The Twins were like $9. The whoever the hell was the other Diamondbacks and Milwaukee was like $28. The least expensive seat you could get at Citizens Bank Park, $145.
Yeah.
8,
Yeah.
11, 23, 145. Which
It's
means you're not getting
know,
a ticket unless you're willing to blatantly overpay.
and it's a
at
shame
Philadelphia.
because at Tampa Bay's got a really good team. I've had a really, I mean, I was just there for the Eagles. You know, you go down the Parkway. I forget the name. Dale Mabry.
Dale Mayberry Boulevard. Been down
Yeah,
it many times.
Dale Mabry Boulevard. You know, Steinbrenner Field's there. It's, you know, that's where the Yankees train. They don't even own their own town. And they have a very good team. It's
They don't play in the town. They play across the causeway.
Petersburg. But you know, it's all the same area. That's like South Jersey fans or Eagles fans by and large. So it's all the same area, drawn from the same people. But yeah, I mean, look, you know, and we always talk about it, and it is, and I think the Eagles enjoy the little respite, to be honest, when the Phillies make a run, because there's so much emphasis on them at all times. I think they enjoy taking a little breath when some of us, the media, moves over to the Phillies and the Phillies become the lead story for a little while. I think they actually enjoy it. But yeah, it's tough to play in Philadelphia, and you've seen it with the Eagles, and I think it's even more so with the Phillies, and I would even say the Sixers when the playoffs start. That place gets rocking. It's just a really, really difficult place to play, and hockey hasn't been great recently, but the Flyers as well when they're good, which hasn't been a while. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of passion in this city. I don't think when it comes to sports, I don't think anybody's going to deny that.
And it was on full display last year. And opposing manager said to Rob Thompson, after coming in to play the Phillies in the playoffs, it was like 4 hours of hell. It was the beauty of last night. 4 hours sandwiched into 2 hours and 30 minutes. Nola was so good and so effective in blowing through them that I was home well before midnight last night. I made good time getting out of the ballpark.
Yeah, it's nice. You know, those before the pitch clock and those old Yankees Red Sox games that would take 17 hours. Yeah, it's nice to get a sped up baseball game every once in a while.
And Nola contributed to that. And one last note, and then we'll get to the Eagles, we promise, guys. Guy I was really happy for last night was Bryson Stott. He is just the kind of guy you want to root for. Phillies have done very well at bringing in guys from other teams. Schwarber and Harper and Real Muto and Castellanos has come up big this year. But when homegrown guys and Wheeler, maybe the biggest of them all, well, Harper, but then Wheeler, homegrown guys get it done, there's just a little added pleasure to it. And Stott against a left-handed pitcher going yards, only the second ever postseason grand slam for the Philadelphia Phillies. I didn't know that. My daughter showed me a tweet of it last night. I said, "You're kidding me." Shano's tweet back in 2000, grand slam in 2008, the only other one, Phillies postseason history. So I was especially psyched for Bryson Stott. That was a hell of a shot. And you talk about
Yeah, that was no doubt about it. As soon as it came off the bat, you knew it. So that's always fun when you see something like that. Uh, it really just, the place erupted. And I
Yeah.
saw the one clip, the one clip with where they took out I think the Phillies put it up. They took out the play by play. It's even better because you hear
Just
you hear
listening
the
to crowd
song,
noise.
yeah, the crowd noise coming up, and then you hear it's even better. Nothing against the guys doing the game, but yeah, baseball's fun in the playoffs. Sometimes it's not fun. I used to be I know you're a huge baseball guy. You're baseball first, and obviously your dad. I was a huge baseball guy growing up. I kind of gone in a different direction because I'll be honest, I don't like the way the game has gone compared to the way it used to be. But when you get to the playoffs, you get to the drama. It's still got that same juice it always had.
When you're high-fiving people that you don't even know, just happen to be sitting next to you in the stadium, you're at an event, and I was lucky enough to be at that event last night. So congrats to the Phillies. Bring on the Braves. Braves were better than them in the regular season last year. They took them out. They can do the same exact thing this year. So, yes, we are Birds 365, and we talk football about 98.7% of the time. There's your 1.3%. That'll carry us for the next couple, but we may mention the Phillies again next week when the Braves and Phillies get underway. Johnny Mac, you were in South Philly earlier than I was. I didn't get down there till late afternoon to be ready to go to the game. You were down there early afternoon to see an Eagle practice, an actual full practice. And they got a new participant, Mr. Roby, jumping right in and getting some reps. How do you look?
Well, yeah, we only get to see individual work, but there's a couple hints. Number one, they gave him a locker on the outside, a permanent locker. A lot of the practice squad guys have lockers on the inside, which are movable. They have wheels on them. So that's an indication that they expect him to be here long term, and this is. Nothing's guaranteed because he can get ready, get up to speed, not perform well. And I've said from the start that I don't think it precludes Howie Roseman if something comes up by the trade deadline to go in a different direction. But this is the plan, and it's a veteran player who knows how to play. I think that's important, especially with this scheme that we always talk about, Jody. Guys who know how to play is very, very important. And that communication aspect. So I think he'll be an upgrade from that perspective. He didn't play that well in New Orleans last year, 10th NFL season. So you have to worry about, how much is left in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the bigger impact to me is, it's pretty clear. The Eagles know they got to get Bradbury back outside. Okay. They might need one more game. But they got to get him out where he's most important and where he's best. And I think even James is a great guy for those who haven't met him, a team guy. He'll do anything you ask, but even he wants to be outside, and he should. I mean, he's an all-pro player. So,
all right, so here's the question. If Roby isn't ready to go, and I see Johnny Stolnis ready to jump in and join us, we'll get him up here in just a couple minutes. If certainly Roby isn't ready to go, which maybe he can intake all this information and get enough just practice reps in that they feel comfortable enough to play him. I think that would be asking a lot because, as you just noted, John, communications is so important here. And he's certainly a veteran. And he might be a smart guy, but there's nothing like being out there with guys actually doing it. So you're going to have limited reps at best. So if I were a bet man, I'd bet he's not ready to go this week. So if that's the case, if Sidney Brown is not ready to go, and I'll get the practice status from you in just a second, but Justin Evans is, do they move Evans down to the slot and go with Edmonds and Blankenship at safety for the majority of the game? Or do they still have Bradbury for most of the snaps?
I think they try to power through with what they have been doing. And if Sidney's not, and by the way, I think Sidney, he was limited yesterday on Wednesday, but I think that's a good sign. Justin was full. So I think he's going to play, no doubt about it. But I think they'll power through one more game with what they have been doing, and maybe even Goodrich gets back involved in the short term because of the type of receivers the Rams have versus what the Eagles have been facing. But you even saw it a little bit against Washington because they have Curtis Samuel and they still went the way they went. So I think they'll power through one more game with Bradbury doing most of the work, Job outside, and then try to get Roby up to speed for the Jets. And I think then they're off and running with what they want. And that's James back on the outside, legitimate slot cornerback.
You got Mac and Mac here. We're going to continue to talk about the slot and the matchup against the Rams with our next guest, Johnny Stolnis from Bleeding Green Nation and Eye on the Enemy podcast. Going to jump in with us here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
That's right. We're talking Eagles today on Birds 365. We did mix in a little Phillies, and our next guest talks both Eagles and Phillies. When he's podcasting his life away, doesn't matter whether it's Hit Caesar, Eye on the Enemy. John Stolnis is talking Philly sports. Not a bad effort out of the Phillies last night, right, Stolnis?
No, we are living right now. I'll tell you what. Talk about a team firing on. We got two teams firing on all cylinders right now. Maybe not all cylinders for the Eagles, but a lot of the cylinders. Enough of them anyway.
Yeah, the Eagles higher expectations. Amazing because the Phillies are in the middle of the run, but the Eagles got to be perfect. John Stolnis, perfect.
I know, nothing less than acceptable. Yep.
Yeah, two teams are 4-0. One of them is the Eagles, but yeah, since you went down that route, what is your biggest issue with this team so far? It could be on either side of the ball. What what are you going to look at and say, you know what, this has got to get better?
Yeah, I mean, I think the offense has done enough to obviously put up the amount of yardage that they have. They've kind of figured out week to week. I think they've been great at making adjustments, seeing what defenses are doing and then not being so married to their weak script leading up to the game that they can't adjust. So I think the offense has been fine. I think we've been seeing improvement from Jalen Hurts. What worries me is the pass defense. And I know you guys were talking about some of the machinations in the secondary with the new addition, but I think that's the big worry for me right now, is because that's where I see that the talent gap is the greatest. They don't have a lot of star players or established NFL veterans in the corner slot and at safety, and they really struggle with linebackers in pass coverage, and so that's the area that I think is most troublesome. And I think this week's matchup against the Rams, especially if Cooper Kupp plays, presents a real matchup problem for this team. And that'd be my biggest area of concern, is how do they get that right?
Very legit concern. And if you just want to break it down to the stats, I'm forgetting the exact number off the top of my head, Johnny. You want to look it up quickly. The Birds are somewhere in the 20s yards.
27th in pass.
27th in pass defense. Last year, second in the National Football League. So when you drop from second to 27th out of 32 teams,
I think they were first. First
second
in
overall,
passing
first
defense,
in
second
passing. You're
overall.
right. Thank you. That's a pretty precipitous drop. So yes, you pointed to secondary, and the Eagle defenders will say, yeah, but look at the injuries they have. True, but doesn't everybody in the National Football League have injuries? Don't you have to plug a hole basically on a week in, week out basis for your team in the National Football League? Or do you believe that you got to cut the Eagles some slack because they have had a couple significant injuries, with Maddox being the biggest of it?
I mean, when you're talking about slot cornerbacks, certainly you had to kind of factor in Avonte Maddox was going to miss some time this year, but I don't think you expected for him to miss the whole season. So there's that. And Zach McPherson getting lost late in training camp or late in the preseason certainly was what hurt. And hopefully getting, I don't know, like you guys, whether or not Bradley Roby has anything left in the tank, but I certainly feel better having an experienced veteran there. Maybe if he's playing with Slay and Bradbury, he doesn't have to be all world. He just has to be a little bit better than Bradbury in the slot with Josh Jobe on the outside. We'll see how quickly Roby can get acclimated to the defense and what Sean Desai wants to do. But I give them some leeway, because they really haven't had the personnel to put together a really strong pass defense. But I think coming into the season, we knew this was a weakness. It's proving to be a weakness. I think Nicholas Morrow has been really good at certain aspects. Obviously, 3 sacks last week. I like that they're using him in blitzing schemes, but with him and Zach Cunningham in coverage, it's just a weak point in this offense. It was a weak point last year too, even with the different personnel. Not as much of a weak point, but teams don't have to go after Slay. They don't have to go at Bradbury on the outside if they can target the middle of that field. And they've been able to do that. They've been able to get 2nd and 3s, 3rd and 2, too many easy 3rd down conversions for offenses so far. And until they can kind of get that shored up, I think there is some blame to go there, because they came into the season knowing that was a weakness.
All right, a little devil's advocate here, John, because I agree. I don't think the passing defense has been great, but I will point out that they're generally playing from the lead, or have been. So teams are going to throw more. Teams have not been able to run the ball on this team. So, part of it is you're going to have big numbers. It happened against Minnesota. It happened against Washington. Tampa Bay, they didn't do anything, but you get my point. Sometimes the game, if you're playing from the lead, if you're good, and nobody's been able, they're giving up 63 yards, I think, a game on the ground. So if you can't run it, you almost have to throw it, and that's going to manifest itself into numbers. You believe that, or is that just a positive spin?
Yeah, I think in 2 of the games, obviously, you're talking about the Vikings and the Buccaneers, that was the case. The Eagles had a pretty comfortable lead in both of those games, and especially with Minnesota, Kirk Cousins racked up a bunch of garbage time statistics. So a lot of that was there. But in week 1 against New England, that game was close pretty much the whole game. And last week against Washington, that game was back and forth the whole way. And you just look at that late drive by Sam Howell and the fact that they weren't able to get any turnovers, any interceptions from him. Sam Howell looked really good in that game. And I don't know how much of that is Howell and Eric Bieniemy and how much of that is the fact the Eagles just are having trouble covering people at the moment. And so it's been a mixed bag. I would say you're partially right. And I would say also that there have been times when you've needed this pass defense to do something and they haven't been able to get it done. And we're seeing, a lot of criticism with the Eagles edge rushers, and certainly that's warranted. They have not been able to get consistent pressure on the quarterback. Most of it's come from the middle of the defensive line, but offensive coordinators know attack the middle of that field to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands in just over 2 seconds, and you don't have to worry about the edge rushers. And so there's too many guys open in the middle of the field, allowing the quarterbacks to have that quick release and get rid of the football. And that's been the way you attack this Eagles defense, really going back to last year. Some offenses have been better at it than others. Sam Howell was really good with it last week, surprisingly. And we'll see what Matthew Stafford is able to do with his personnel. But that's what's scary to me is they just get rid of that ball so fast because there's so much middle of the field that's open.
All right, before you jump in, Jody, because I want to hear both of you, because John brought up a good point. I want to bring up the scheme for this reason. Slay was on this podcast. Everybody's got a podcast. John's got a bunch of them. Jody and I have them. Slay's got his own podcast. He was getting a little criticism. He didn't have his best day. So you know how Darius is. He wants to explain what's going on. And he was explaining the cushion because everybody hates the cushion. Cushion. They want to press. That's not what this defense is. I mean, now we have it with Gannon. Now we have it with Sean Desai. That's the belief. That's Vic Fangio. That's, make people go 13 plays, 14 plays, 15 plays. Do fans just, my thesis is fans don't like the scheme, but they're blaming the coordinator, and maybe they should.
He's got to take at least partial in it for it.
But my larger point is they just don't like the style.
Yeah,
they don't like the style, and that's sort of the modern NFL because the Eagles are like one of 12 teams that play this scheme. So you think it's more they got to change from the scheme, or this is what it is, and they just got to get better at it?
I would say, can we mix it up? Does it have to be one all the time or the other? Like if you're facing a 3rd and 3 late in the game, is that the best time to give a cushion? Like, can we use, can we do Vic Fangio's style of defense, which I agree, you'd rather give up a 14 play drive than a big play, make a team have to go the length of the field on you. And I'm fine with most of the time the Eagles keep the score low. I mean, they generally speaking works for them. But can there be situations where it's 3rd and 4 that maybe giving 7, 8, 10 yards of cushion in that particular instance isn't the wisest course of action? And not only that, maybe it's not possible to mix it up. Maybe you have a certain personnel grouping that it's just impossible to do both, or like 10% of the time you're playing press. And I get, you get personnel to match a scheme and it's sometimes a square peg in a round hole. I get all that, but you can, it's like a pitcher who has to mix up his pitch arsenal, 3rd time through the order. All right, let's bring out the changeup. It's sometimes throwing a changeup every once in a while at an offense can, even if you're not that good at it, can rattle them. And so I think in a short yardage situation, especially in a big moment in the 4th quarter, when you really need to not give up anything, that in that particular instance, maybe throwing a change up in that spot would be beneficial. That's my only thing with the Vic Fangio style and playing back. Like sometimes it's not warranted. Sometimes just do something different and see if that works.
I like John's idea of just change it up once in a while, not change it drastically, but just throwing a curve every once in a while. I agree with that. Number 2, Bud Slay, you came back, big guy. Okay, you can't be complaining about this scheme hasn't changed. You've been part of this scheme now for years, and you were out the door, got released, and then you resigned. You decided to come back here, so you can't complain. You knew what you were coming back to, okay, right. Darius? I love Slay as much as anybody, but he's always got some kind of explanation and/or excuse. So I'm not buying that a little bit. John, here's where I want to take you next. Go over the other side of the ball offense. I did this on Monday. Everything we ask about the Eagles has to be, but they're 4-0. Because we got to point out what they could still get better at. But you have to remember, most important thing, but they're 4-0. Jalen Hurts rushing, but they're 4-0. His rushing numbers are down significantly. He's on pace to have less than 500 yards. He's rushed for 750 plus both of the last 2 years. And the coaches are now actually addressing it and saying, yeah, we're telling him to protect himself. Yeah, we're telling him to get down. Yeah, we're telling him to slide, which I don't necessarily disagree with.
Right.
They have a major investment in this guy. We saw Marcus Mariota play this preseason. That would be an issue. So Jalen Hurts staying on the field is kind of important. Here's where I get a little put off. When they signed the big contract with Jalen, the coach specifically said, look right in the camera and said, when asked about Jalen's rushing, why would I take away his superpower? Yeah. Well, that's exactly what you're doing. You're taking away his superpower. And it might be well advised to take away his superpower. I'm not saying you're wrong, coach, but you looked at us back in the offseason and kind of either you weren't looking far enough ahead to realize that, we might have to ask Jalen to run less, and or you just flat out lied to us. It's one of the two, coach. Which is it? And is it an issue? Are they making the right decision? If we all agree that Jalen is running less, slide. When did he ever slide before? He slid a couple times already this year. He never slid before. Is this the right thing for the Eagles to do, taking away, and I'm using the coach's phrase here, not mine, Jalen's superpower?
Again, does it have to be all or nothing? And I think that's one of the issues that we're seeing with Jalen Hurts is I don't think he knows, or he hasn't gotten the feel yet of when to push it and when to get down. And I think that's part of the reason for his overall uncomfortableness in the pocket is I think he's a little unsure of taking off and running and exposing himself to contact. Now we saw in the fourth quarter during that final drive where he got pressured in the pocket and he took off and ran for 24 yards. That was great to see that it's still there.
Right.
Because he's just kind of looked slow. He's looked a little uncertain when running the football.
See, you're the second one to say that this week. He looked slow. I don't believe that for a millisecond. He looked tentative.
Yes.
There's a difference between slow and tentative. I don't think he looks slow at all. But tentative, I'll sign off on that.
And I think on that scramble, you saw it, and I was like, oh, okay, he's not slower. He still has it in there, but there was another play earlier in the game where he was outside the pocket, and all he had to do was beat like a slot cornerback to get to the outside. And instead of getting past that guy, he just went down. Like it was as if he didn't, like you said, he didn't want to initiate contact or even get involved in any contact. And he would not have taken like a strong hit from that slot corner there, but he didn't want to engage. He didn't want to engage physically with that guy. And so I wonder, are we going to see more Jalen Hurts running the football with authority, maybe when the schedule gets a little tougher, when some of these really big opponents are on the schedule, like the Niners and the Chiefs and the Cowboys, and we don't want to risk him early in the season? And I get that. If you're going to play this way, stop calling designed quarterback runs. If you don't want him to absorb any hits, then just make him a pocket passer for right now. And then if you want to unleash it in the second half of the season when the schedule gets tougher, when we have a little bit more season behind us, I think that's an understandable philosophy. I don't think Jalen Hurts' running ability or his running are going to go away. It may be that they're going to pick and choose when they really unleash it. If that's the case, as long as they're winning games, as long as he's throwing the football effectively and the running game with the running backs is working effectively, I'm okay with Jalen Hurts playing the way he is right now. That being said, when those plays are there, like it was late in the fourth quarter, when he has to get out of the pocket and you have to get a first down, he needs to do what he needs to do to get the first down and keep the chains moving. And that's my concern, is that he's not sure when to do that. And that's affecting his decision-making in the pocket. And it's one of the reasons why he's looked a little shaky so far in the first 4
Yeah.
games.
I like Jody's word tentative more than, I like that word to describe what's going on. It's ironic because I think Jalen Hurts, John, is, amongst the, it's tough to grade this, but from a perspective of being around players, he does one of the best jobs I've ever seen about closing out the outside noise. But man, I think it still seeps through. I think he's very cognizant. He wants to play 17 games. He wants to be out there for every single game. And I don't want to compare it to Donovan McNabb, who completely changed his philosophy to prove to goofballs that he could do something. I don't think Jalen's at that point, but I really think, missing 1 game and missing 2 games is too paramount in his mind. Like, I mean, why worry about that kind of stuff? Do you sense that, or am I off base?
Well, I mean, if they're telling him to get down and not take hits, they're putting it in his head too. Like it's not a Jalen Hurts thing. And when the coaching staff is telling you to avoid contact, to avoid taking the big hit, I mean, he took a big hit. What was it, against Tampa, where he got lit up and fumbled in that game? Or it was in New England. It was against New England, first game of the season, right? Where he got hammered.
Yeah, the fumble. He took a big hit in Tampa as well.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
You're going to take big hits.
Yeah.
I mean,
but that's part of playing the position, and that's part of what makes him so special. So I do agree. Like that needs to be a part of his game, and I think it will be. And I think it later in the season, he'll start to worry less, I think, about missing games. If that is a big part of his mind, how often do we say it in football? If you're worried about getting injured, you're more likely to get injured because you are going to be tentative. You are going to be uncertain, and you're going to find yourself in a position where you can get yourself hurt. So I get it. It's a hard line to walk. It's tough to find that balance. I think you want Jalen Hurts to play instinctually. The more he's thinking about it, the less effective he's going to be. And maybe it just needs to become something he gets used to, the idea of not running as much before he starts to feel comfortable with it. I think we're starting to see that. He is feeling more comfortable in the pocket. He did look better last week against the Commanders, put up big numbers passing the football, and he's got all those weapons. They got to figure out a way to get Dallas Goedert more involved in the offense. But with DeAndre Swift running the way he is, everything else, they haven't really needed Jalen Hurts' legs just yet. My guess is there will come a week when they do, and he'll run.
Speaking of DeAndre Swift, I thought he was a little underused this past week. The most questionable play they decided, and it wasn't a terrible decision. It just went absolutely nowhere. It was almost disastrous. 3rd and 11 up the middle to Kenny Gainwell. The coaching staff seems to have a confidence or a trust in Kenny Gainwell, more so than I do, because I just don't see Kenny Gainwell making plays. And yes, this is kind of a thing I can't get over. The fact that all off season, people, Kenny Gainwell was so good in the playoffs. Kenny Gainwell was very good in one playoff game. He's great against the Giants. Didn't do much against the Niners. Didn't do much more. He might have done more than Miles, but wasn't great in the Super Bowl by any stretch of the imagination. So everybody's tying that one really good game against the Giants Kenny Gainwell had to, he's the man. Are they overusing Kenny Gainwell and underusing DeAndre Swift so far?
I'll tell you what, I think they're overusing Kenny Gainwell. I don't know if they're underusing DeAndre Swift. They certainly used him a lot in that second game of the season against Minnesota, and then they used him a little bit less against Tampa. Last week, I think they did give up on the running game just as a whole a little bit too soon. But Washington's got a really good front four. They were doing a pretty good job against the run. Where's Rashad Penny? Like what did he do this offseason in the summer to essentially become persona non grata here? As he even on the roster at this point? All these things about Rashad Penny, you heard his average yards per carry, and he was going to be a big part of the offense. I would rather see him get some of these non DeAndre Swift carries, because I don't want DeAndre Swift necessarily toting the ball 25 times a game. I think 16 to 20 carries a game for DeAndre Swift is a pretty good sweet spot for him. And I think he can get close to 100 yards every week if you're using him in that way. What I'd really like to see is Rashad Penny get more involved if he's effective. And if not, why is he on the roster? Let's find a different answer. Boston Scott, Boston Scott can be a guy who can soak. I trust Boston Scott more than Kenny Gainwell in certain situations. So I do think there's a fascination with Kenny Gainwell that defies logic, that defies explanation. I don't think Gainwell's a bad player. Like you said, he has had some good moments. I think he's okay as a change of pace, but man, I don't want him out there. I don't want him out there on a drive when you're trying to go tie the game, getting important carries on second and third down. You got to have your best guy out there. And right now that's DeAndre Swift. And you got to explain to me why the other two running backs on this roster are getting essentially no snaps on offense too.
Well, Boston had the concussion, so
right.
That's part of it. But yeah, he's the third. Rashad, I mean, it's pretty clear he's here in case somebody gets hurt. He's, unless somebody falls off, and if Kenny Gainwell loses that fumble, continues to play poorly, maybe they'll revisit it. But one thing, John, and this is everybody, and this maybe explains the fascination with Kenny Gainwell. He's a below average pass protector, and everybody else is awful. Pick up a blitz.
They're all bad.
Yeah.
They didn't address that this offseason.
And that's sort of a league-wide problem. There are so few backs who can pick it up, but it's funny because PFF does like 13. They rate like 13 different categories, and when they rate players, they do it by color. And red is really bad, and there's only like 3 red marks on the entire Eagles roster, and it's all pass protection from the running backs. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, they've been really bad. And Rashad Penny, the one time he was in there, he was terrible. And I think that explains some of it. But Kenny's at least passable.
Yeah,
I would describe it as, and maybe that explains it. But they also like him in hurry up situations. And Rashad's not going to help you there. So it's almost like Rashad's like a good runner. He doesn't do much else. So it's hard to find a fit for him. Now, if DeAndre gets hurt and you need 20 carries from somebody, maybe that's where he gets an opportunity. But unless that happens, I don't know if people would want him out there as much, to be honest.
Yeah, and maybe not. I mean, with the running back situation as a whole, Rashad Penny was one of the first free agents they signed this offseason. They obviously saw something in him, or at least maybe there's a disagreement between Howie Roseman and the coaching staff as far as what Rashad Penny brings to the table. I don't know if that factors into it at all either. But I will say this too, and this is I've never played organized football, so I will totally take the L on this if this opinion is off the mark, and you guys can tell me if that's true or not. But if you're in the shotgun and you're a running back and you're standing next to the quarterback, how hard is it to see which linebacker or safety is coming on a blitz and just kind of get in the way for a minute? I'm sure there's a level of difficulty to picking up the blitz as a running back that is over my head, but don't you just look with your eyes and see who's coming and try to get in the way?
Those guys are coming quick, John.
I know
and
they are.
And you know what? They're not asked to do it at the college level. So many are just, they're lost. And when you get, when you get a Devin White, we'll say, and his athleticism level, and you can't replicate that in practice. So it is a difficult job, but it is frustrating, when you see somebody completely miss and looking the other way. So they just don't do it at the college level. So it's not only an Eagles problem. It's a league-wide problem. But I would say the Eagles are really struggling with that aspect.
Here's where I'll agree with John, and I'll even ask him to look something up. I don't know off the top of my head how good a blocking back, picking up the blitz guy, Matt Breida is, but I know he sucked on Monday night and he almost got Daniel Jones killed. 11 sacks.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they were just running free at him, and I don't remember Matt Breida even getting in the way as you described it, John. once all time. So it is a little tricky. It's not easy.
Yeah.
We'll give him that
Sure.
much credit that it is
I take that.
a
Yep.
skill set. And right now, the Eagles running backs are not displaying it. But hey, if they're in the red, I guarantee you Matt Breida was well in the red last week when the Giants gave up 11 sacks. All right, you mentioned Dallas Goedert, and you're right. He hadn't had a breakout game at all. First game, one ball his way, didn't catch it. Second game, they threw it to him a lot. They threw it to him like 6 inches over the line of scrimmage. He had 7 catches and 22 yards, which is almost hard to do. Make 7 and so few yards that he did. What's the difference? Is it scheme? Is it Goddard? Is it Hurts? The results have just been almost non-existent.
Hey, good call, by the way, Jody. He was in the red.
He was. I know. I watched the game. I watched Daniel Jones get hit after time after time.
I wanted to give you your props. I'm
Thank you
sorry
for
for interrupting.
And I just want to cut the Eagles running backs a little bit of slack. They're not the only running backs in the league who can't pick up a blitz. There are a whole bunch of them, as John pointed out. They don't teach it in college anymore. So why do you even ask them to do it on the pro level? I was asking you, John, Dallas Goedert, much reduced production. What's the biggest reason?
That's a great question. I think if the Eagles knew why, they would probably be getting him the ball a little bit more. I just think AJ Brown has been so productive in a lot of the ways that Dallas Goedert over the middle. He's been making a lot of plays, but the Eagles last couple of weeks have been kind of focused on stretching the field a little bit, and they've had a lot of success with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith down the field. I think, you watch these games and, you look back at the all 22 and they're just not on the same page, Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert. And I don't know if that's a product of the play calling, the new offensive coordinator. Just sometimes you get into a funk with one of your guys and Dallas thinks we're going to go left and Jalen kind of wants to lead him a little bit to the right. And you're just missing. You're just not connecting. And to be fair, Jalen Hurts, I don't think was terribly sharp the first couple weeks of the season. I think a lot of this is probably on Jalen. I think Dallas has been open. I think Jalen's missed him on a few occasions. I think Jalen has been focusing on getting the ball to his star wide receivers. And why wouldn't you? Those guys usually win their matchups. And I think we saw, especially in the Vikings game, but we've seen a lot of teams drop a lot of guys into coverage and kind of blanket the middle of the field. And so there hasn't been a ton of space for Dallas Goedert to work. I think there's a number of different issues here. Again, you take what the defense gives you. The defense has been giving the Eagles room to run the football, and they've been giving the Eagles room to go over the top with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I think Dallas Goedert will get his at a certain point this season. But for whatever reason, it's just not there right now. Again, you can't complain too much. I mean, this team's putting up 350, 400 yards of offense every week. If it's not there, it's not there.
Yeah, we've had that discussion a bunch, John, because they have 2 new coordinators. So, we've asked that question of a number of guests. Who do you think has done a better job? And I think it's mainly been Desai. And I got to tell you, I'm impressed by Brian Johnson. I might be the only one. But you kind of explained why when you're talking about, all right, sometimes change it up on defense. And I think Sean does more of that than Jonathan Gannon. But I think Brian, and we alluded to it, the Minnesota game, they got 6-man boxes, run the football. Washington, you mentioned A.J. Brown. They got that poor Emmanuel Forbes on A.J. Brown. Just throw him the football. The poor kid had to delete his social media because people were so vicious to him, which I do not advocate.
Yeah.
But here's the numbers right now. Now, it's not a large sample size. You're a baseball guy, so statistically, but it's starting to get more meaningful. They're 5th in total offense, 2nd in rushing offense, obviously, but they're 12th in passing offense, 5th in points per game, 9th and 3rd down offense, 7th and 4th down offense. They're top 10 in everything except red zone. They kind of bogged down in the red zone, which is fair. I think he's doing a good job. Now, he's got tremendous talent, but the reason why is because, all right, what I said, Brian Flores gave me 6-man boxes. I'm just going to run it down his throat. Ron Rivera, Jack Del Rio are putting a rookie on A.J. Brown. I'm just going to keep chucking it to him. I think that's good coaching.
Yeah, and Eagles last week scored a touchdown on their opening drive, so obviously he had a good offensive game plan scripted for the first drive. They've made really good second half adjustments this year, and I think last year they were a big second quarter team. This year I think they've been a big third quarter team, and they've really adjusted really well to what defenses' unique looks they've been getting thrown at them. So, and I think he's actually called an egoless game for the Eagles here through the first 4 games. I mean, to just kind of put your creativity aside, every offensive coordinator wants to put his stamp on things. Oh, look at this play call, look at this unique design, look at all. Instead, no, if we just put the ball in DeAndre Swift's belly and let him run, we're going to win this football game, and just go ahead and do that. So I think he's been good. I think he's had some play calls where you scratch your head, which not surprising. The red zone struggles are definitely something that needs to get cleaned up. That's probably the biggest weakness for him right now, is knowing what personnel to use in the red zone and how to get the ball into the end zone from inside the 20. They're getting a lot of touchdowns from outside the 20, but when they're settling for too many field goals here. And there's just been some sloppiness, generally speaking, with the offensive line giving up some sacks, some penalties here and there, a whole bunch of different things. I think on the whole, I'd probably give him like a B- so far for his job as an offensive coordinator. And if you consider it's his first 4 games, you want to grade him on a curve, I could even see a B grade for Brian Johnson so far. I think he's done fine.
All right, I'm going to give you a chance to play Howie Roseman for a second here, John, okay?
All right.
Trade deadline coming up in 3 weeks and change. Let's say Les Snead, the general manager of the Rams, has some kind of brain aneurysm. And he calls you and says, listen, I'll offer you Puka Nacua for Keely Ringo, who was drafted before Nacua was in this past year's draft. No upside, no everything. We know production to this point. One is second in the NFL in receiving. The other one is can't get on the field in the National Football League. Redo that deal for the Eagles for their third wide receiver?
Sure. I think absolutely. I mean, I think, especially in the secondary, they obviously like Josh Jobe. They obviously have other guys, you can play at safety. I think that whatever position Keely Ringo would end up playing here in his NFL career, I think the Eagles have some options there, some other guys that they really like, and this kid for the Rams looks like he's a real deal. I mean, it's kind of surprised that they've needed him with Cooper Kupp out, but Nacua to play the way he has through the first 4 weeks. It's one of the reasons the Rams are 2-2, and they actually could be 3-1. I mean, they've actually, the offense has been better than I think anybody would have expected. I talked to one of the writers for SB Nation's Rams site, Turf Show Times, and he was very pessimistic about this team coming into the season. Overly pessimistic. I was surprised how down on his own team he was. It's just, and so they've looked better than I think anybody thought that they were going to look. Sean McVay's done a good job, and I think Nacua is one of the reasons why. So yeah, I'm doing that deal because with Quez and Zacchaeus has played really pretty well in the time that he's made a couple of plays, but Nacua has so much upside. You put him on the field with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Oh boy,
I would do that. The ball. This is what I said to Jody yesterday, and you just mentioned it, John. They can't even get Dallas Goedert the ball. He's here. He doesn't touch the ball. You don't even know who he is if he's here. One of the major things is he's gotten an opportunity, by the way, with a high volume throwing quarterback as well. If he was here, you wouldn't even know who he is. Not to say he might eventually turn into a player, but he's not AJ Brown, despite his numbers. He's not Devontae Smith. He's not Dallas Goedert. And as I said, they can't get the ball to Dallas Goedert and yet. I think they will eventually. You don't even know who he is on this team. So part of it is it's not a vacuum. He's not going to step in here and catch 50 passes because he's not going to have the same opportunities. And part of it is Slay's age, Bradbury's age. Long term, they need outside cornerbacks. And yeah, do they like Jobe? Do they like Eli Ricks? Yeah. But if they were the bet on one of the three at this point, they'd still bet on Ringo being the best of that group. I think Ringo's a good fit for an Eagles team because he's a developmental player that they might need 1 or 2 years down the line. Nakua is a good fit for a Rams team that needs receivers and high octane, passing offense with Matthew Stafford. But they're not a good team. 20-point score on a bad NBA team. That's how I describe it.
Here's the only thing you're not factoring in, John. We're one turned ankle on A.J. Brown.
Well,
from Quez Watkins being the number 2 wide receiver on this team.
And I don't like that. And I don't like that.
Then you got to protect yourself against that. You got to have a safety net. If Puka Nakua is my safety net as my 3rd wide receiver.
Yeah, but then we're also got to point out, why would Les Snead do that? He wouldn't. He wouldn't have a brain
I said he'd have to have a brain aneurysm to do it. I'm just saying Howie passed on him last year. Everybody else passed on him all the way till the 5th round too. I'm not just calling Howie on the carpet. It's one of those. Yeah. How the hell did Reed Blankenship go undrafted? How did Puka Nakua get to the 5th round? I'm just pointing out if Howie had the chance via a brain aneurysm to correct the draft pick, would he do it?
My point is that roster building is a science, and role players are role players. Like, would I want a Pro Bowl level guard to step in for Cam Jurgens this week against Aaron Donald? Yes. Is that realistic? No, because you can't have that type of player stashed on your bench. And if you do, he's going to immediately be moving on or going in a different direction, or he's going to beat out the player. You can't have an all-star. You can't just assemble, okay, this guy's better than this guy and get the 53 best players. Yeah. Mo Williams was a running back when I covered the Vikings. People may remember him or not remember him, but I think it was Mike Tice who told me, the old saying, he's not the first one, but he said it about Mo Williams. You can't win with 53 Mo Williams, but you can't win without one of them. You need role players. You need role players. And Calais Ringo, by the way, for people disappointed in him, he's been a heck of a special teams player. And Michael Clay brought him up as one of the reasons why Britton Covey has improved. In punt returns, he's been a good gunner as well. I think they're happy with Calais Ringo, but I think, that's boring. Special teams is boring stuff. But yeah, I mean, you could always go down. I think Aaron Donald, since it's Aaron Donald week, I think it was the 13th pick in the draft. So if you revisit, 12 teams made a stinking mistake. I'll tell you that right off the bat.
Well, John, you say all the time here, how the hell did the National Football League let Carter drop down to number 9? Happens all the time.
Yeah,
well,
happens all the time.
You don't have a problem pointing out the other teams that made mistakes to allow the Eagles to do well, but you're going to give the Eagles a pass for not taking a guy.
No, my point. I'm not giving him. But I'm saying he does not even play on this team. So what is the point?
Ringo.
Yes, he does. He plays significant. Again, nobody cares about special teams.
Add the stats together. Who do you think plays more if they got Puka Nakua next week? If he's going in as the 3rd wide receiver, who plays more? Keely Ringo in his special team snaps, or Puka Nakua as their 3rd wide receiver?
Keely Ringo plays more because he's a 4 guy just by number of reps. The 3rd receiver on this team gets no stinking traffic. You'd be ripping Puka Nakua on this team, Jody McDonald, because he wouldn't do a goddamn thing on this team unless somebody got hurt and maybe he turns into the same player he is, and then you'd realize it. I'm not saying that, but he would not play on this team, period. He wouldn't play. So what's the point? Am I crazy, John? He's not playing on this team. Every situation is not the same.
Jody, I think John convinced me. I do. No, I hear what you're saying about the role players, and we're talking about having a running back who can pick up a blitz, or when we were looking at slot receiver, Zach Pascal was one of those guys that did a lot of the blocking dirty work last year, and that was one of the things. Like, did they get a guy who can replace Zach Pascal doing that kind of work? Is Zacchaeus a guy who can do that kind of thing? So those are the role type players that we're talking about, and I think those guys are important. I will say I think Nakua is going to probably have a better pro career than Ringo, but it's too early to say for sure. So it's an interesting question. I think I'm leaning. I initially was siding with you, Jody, but I think John convinced me a little bit.
Then
All right.
I
I'll
hope for
take it.
both of your cases,
take it.
AJ Brown or Devontae Smith never turns an ankle. Because when
Same.
Quez is asked to step up in a big spot this year, I'll be thinking of Puka Nacua. And it's all just a hypothetical question. And I know it takes off the whole streaming world whenever I do this and ask hypothetical. They're not getting Puka Nacua, so it's all just thinking through several mental football steps. But I'd like to have a better third wide receiver option than what the Eagles have right now. That's my main point. All right, John, do the Eagles get to 5-0 this week and beat the Rams in LA?
Yeah, I can't pick the Eagles against the Eagles right now. I can't pick the Eagles. I can't pick against the Eagles the way they've been playing. I mean, they're doing what they need to do. This team they're winners, man. I mean, despite all the noise and all the problems that they have, they, unlike any Eagles team we've ever seen, they find a way to win every single week. Like they are a group that figures it out, and they will figure it out against the Rams. I think they're going to be able to put some points on the board. If Cooper Kupp comes back, we might see a big Cooper Kupp game, but the Eagles are usually able to overcome stuff like that. So yeah, I think they beat Los Angeles and go to 5-0.
All right. So you got them 5-0, close, hanging the balance. Do they need the special teams player of the week to get it done for them late again? Jake just keeps racking up these special team player of the week awards.
Yeah, they'll need Jake, but I think it'll be something along the lines of like a 27-23. So yeah, I think it'll be pretty close.
All right, we kept you too long, so I apologize that you had to hear my rant. But at John Stolnis, make sure you follow John on Twitter. You're right, you're a baseball guy, so 2 questions to end it. Phillies have a chance against the Braves, and the Eagles are 21-1, 957 winning percentage. That's pretty good as a baseball guy, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, if I could break out an Excel spreadsheet for you on that, but I think that sums it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Phillies Braves though. They got a shot.
I think the Phillies win it in 5. I do.
Oh.
I do. I think they're playing as well, if not better, than any team in baseball right now. And you look at the rosters, they match up against the Braves better than anybody.
Johnny, always a pleasure, brother. We appreciate whatever you jump in. We'll get you back up in a couple of weeks.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.
That is John Stolnis here on Birds 365.
In 5, they're going to dominate, according to John.
Who? The Phillies?
Phillies. He picked the Phillies in 5.
Series.
Yeah.
So now it's 7-game series. This is best of 5. So if you win in 5,
that's John. He said win in 5. Yeah, 3-2. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not paying attention to baseball, Johnny.
And I give you one other one. You kind of missed out on Olamide Zaccheaus' snaps as compared to Kaylee Ringo's snaps this week. 61-25. Olamide. So the third wide receiver does play a lot more than a guy who's even a core 4 special teamer gets on the field. That's why.
They did. They played 91% 11 personnel last week, which is a high. But yeah, maybe I overstated that point of it. But the larger point, which I didn't get with John, but I got with you, they want the trade. They want to trade on the field to help AJ and Devontae. And one guy runs 4.3, the other guy runs 4.6. That trait is not there. I can't make you go my direction with, it's not about just assembling. Is Puka Nacua a better receiver than Quez Watkins? I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%. It's not just about 1, 2, 3. He's a better receiver. It's about how do you make things easier for AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, because those are your guys. Those are your traffic guys. The third receiver, whether it's Quez Watkins or Olamide Zaccheaus or Puka Nacua, they're getting scraps. They're getting scraps in this offense unless those 2 guys aren't on the field. Their job is to make things easier for AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. And that's why, and we'll see this week because Quez was a full participant yesterday, so he should be back. And if Olamide's pushing him, in theory, Olamide has been more productive But I think they're going back to Quez Watkins for the reason I stated. They're trying to make things easier when it comes to spacing and manipulating the defense for the 2 star receivers. It's not just about, you go get Adam Thielen, who's 33 years old. He's better than all of them, but he's not a fit on this team. I can throw 100 receivers out there that are better than Quez Watkins. It's not necessarily a fit on the Philadelphia Eagles. That's all I'm trying to say.
John, I completely understand both yours and what you're portraying as the Eagles' philosophy. Here's where I get off the boat. If I'm a defensive coordinator going against the Philadelphia Eagles, if I'm a defensive secondary player going against the Philadelphia Eagles, am I worried about Quez Watkins and his 4.4 inch? Make him a 4.2 speed guy. Yeah,
4.3.
okay. Or whatever you want to call him.
No, but you said this.
I'm not going to worry about him. I'm going to dare Jalen Hurts to throw the ball to Quez Watkins instead of AJ Brown or Devontae Smith.
Yeah,
please have at it, Jalen.
I remember you saying that last year. You just let him go. Just let him run by the defense. You're going to get fired if you just let him go, because he's already had a 99-yard reception where he didn't get in. He's had long touchdowns. He can run by people. And if you're a defensive coordinator and you say that, I'm not going to pay attention to Quez Watkins, all of a sudden he runs by you and you get the big play.
God, you understand? I'm not speaking literally, right?
Well, I mean that's what I'm saying. You have to account for him. You have. That's my whole point. It is hyperbole to say don't pay attention. You have to account for him. That's what he adds to this team. That the fact that you don't want to, you prefer to put all the attention on AJ and Devontae Smith, but you can't, and it makes it more difficult. And as you condense things, and to a larger, maybe a better example of my point would be when we were at Bijan 365, and I tried to explain to people. Now, Bijan's a phenomenal talent. I'm not going to say he's not better than DeAndre Swift or any other running back that they could bring in here, but he's not. You don't need him on this team. They have trouble getting to the football, to the playmakers. It's not fantasy football. We can't get the football on the Philadelphia Eagles to Dallas Goedert, who's a star tight end. There's only one football. Now, if you lose AJ Brown down the road and you want to go about it a different way, but there's only so much to go around. And the Eagles have literally last season, 10 of the 11 players on offense were either all pros, Pro Bowl selections, or at worst Pro Bowl alternates. Excuse me, it was 9 out of 11. I'm counting Dallas because Dallas wasn't, because he missed 5 games. That's the only reason he wasn't.
Right.
So it was 10 out of 11. Number 11 was Quez Watkins. Is he a good player? No. Is he an average player? And John brought up Zach Pascal too. They guess what? They'd like to have Zach Pascal. They would.
Are you counting Miles in that group?
Yeah, Miles made the Pro Bowl last year.
Okay. So they let a Pro Bowl running back walk away.
Yeah, he made the Pro Bowl. I mean, hey, he made the Pro Bowl because of Jalen Hurts, because of the offensive line, but he made the Pro Bowl. But that's a perfect example of fit as well. Check out Miles' numbers in Carolina this year versus Miles' numbers in Philadelphia.
Right.
Puka's not having the same numbers here, conversely, as he's having in Los Angeles, mainly because of the opportunity. Would he be the third best receiver on this team? I'm 100% with you, Jody.
Right.
He would be the third best receiver.
That's my point. If you have a chance to get an upgrade, even though it's not theoretically as good a fit as Quez is, because that's all it is theoretically, because Quez doesn't actually catch all that many balls over the top and score touchdowns when everybody is so worried about A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, as they should be. Yeah, I'm talking about improving a third wide receiver over your third defensive back who can't get on the field, but is a pretty good special teams player. That to me would be an upgrade of the overall roster and give the Eagles a better chance to win. All right, we went real long. Quickie timeout, come back, more Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
My name is Dr. Bruce Grossinger, and I'm the medical director of Philadelphia PRP and Stem Cell Institute. I'm reaching out to those who suffer from spine and joint pain. We use treatment methods that require no surgery, no scalpel, no drugs.
Running, walking, or whatever your desires are, Dr. Grossinger is where you need to come.
You can benefit from the same PRP and stem cell treatment as Wilbert Montgomery. Call us now at 610-222-5675.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac here on Birds 365. We thank Johnny Stolnis for jumping in. Scott Grayson, sports director, Fox 29, is going to join us coming up in less than 10 minutes now. John, I did want to get your thought on this because we started the show talking about how good it was to be at Citizens Bank Park last night. The Phillies crowd, unbelievable. Eagles crowd on a week-in, week-out basis. I got one crowd question for you. Evan Neal of the New York Giants, who was a high first-round draft pick, number 7 in the draft just a couple of years ago, and has, to be kind, struggled when you have certain expectations when you're the number 7 pick in the draft, and he has struggled mightily since coming into the National Football League. After the Giants got crushed on Sunday night, he decided to take some shots at the New York Giant fans. And I'm not a big fan of the New York Giant fans. So I grew up as a Jet fan, which means there's a rivalry between Jet fan and Giant fan. There's a rivalry between Eagle fans and Giant fans. So I've never been a fan of the Giants fans, but I will come to their defense here. Evan Neal said, and those that are booing us are doing what? Flipping burgers and flipping hot dogs?
Yeah.
Really?
They make
you
a lot
just
of money.
as a team gave up 11, count them, 11 sacks, and you're going to second guess the fans that are booing? That's where you're going to go? his other line, which I loved, why would the lion concern himself with the sheep? Oh, you're a lion, Evan Neal. No, I got a better word for you. Same number
Not
of
on the
letters.
football
Lion would
field.
be 4. Bust would be 4. And that's what you've been in the league so far this year in your career here, big guy. Johnny, how do guys just not know how to handle their business?
Well, I mean, they're very, look, I tell every player.
Wait a minute. Let me say one more thing, and I want your answer. This is an Alabama guy we're talking about. So
Yeah.
he was supposed to be schooled by Nick Saban the same way Jalen Hurts was. How does he let that rat poison into the locker room?
That's a good point. 7th overall pick, and he is from Alabama, so he should know better than most. I tell all these guys, get the hell off social media. Now, it's easier said than done. And I have tremendous empathy for players because they take massive shit, Jody. I mean, sometimes we take shit. I mean, people on the internet can be awful. I mean, let's be honest.
But
So
he was specifically, Johnny, he was specifically talking about booing.
No.
That's an at the game response that you paid to get into. That's not ripping somebody to shreds on Twitter. He
like
was relating
Emmanuel
to being
Forbes.
booed at the game.
But what I'm saying is, it's not, these guys go through this all the time. So sometimes frustrations boil over. Now, you got to be smart. I'm with you 100%. He's got to be smarter than that. You can't say stuff like that. So I'm not trying to defend what he said, but I do have tremendous empathy for players. They get pushed to it. Like, this isn't about one game. First of all, he hasn't played well at all since he's come into the league. So he's heard this constant stream, and I don't know the kid. I could be completely wrong. This is just I assume this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and he got frustrated, and he said some things that he already apologized, and he probably was told to take it back, to be honest. But yeah, I have tremendous empathy. We talked about Nate Gary yesterday a little bit on the show. He came up with Mike Gill. He got crapped on. Emmanuel Forbes had to delete his social media because he had a bad game against A.J. Brown. Alexander Madison had a bad game against the Eagles. He was called unspeakable things because he fumbled a football. So I get it from both sides. These guys take tremendous criticism when they don't perform, and sometimes the frustration boils over. But yeah, you got to be smarter. You got to be smarter than that. And that's why I say, but also, these are generally very young men, and they've grown up in the social media world. They don't even know a world without social media. You tell them they not, unplug it. They're like, what? I can't do that. They're, addicted to it. So I don't know how you fix it. But if every athlete, that would be my advice, get away from, try to focus on your job. And it's easier said than done, but try not to listen to, hey, even us, forget about trolls on social media. For all the Eagles that do listen to this show, and I know some do, they shouldn't even listen to this show, to be honest. And I shouldn't be saying that, but I will.
Do you think we're unfair?
No, not at all. I don't think we're
And I would not tell any Eagle to not watch
Oh,
this show.
I'm just saying as a blanket policy.
Oh, okay.
Try to eliminate outside voices as much as possible as a blanket policy. And by the way, that's what Nick Sirianni tells them every day. Now, hey, Slay's got his own podcast. Kelsey's got his own podcast.
Right.
They're in both worlds. So it's never going to happen. But especially with younger players who aren't performing, yeah, I would stay away.
And John, while your advice is smart and great, it has almost zero possibility to happen.
I agree with that as well.
Where do they come from? They come from college. And what is college now? Oh, I'll go you one better. What is high school soon to become? NIL. Name, image, and likeness. And you know how you get paid? by having social media followers. You know how you run that bottom line up a little bit more? Plug that product via social media. So these guys are actually making money from their social media platforms. So now you want them to just turn it off? You got no shot.
Well, I know it's got no shot, but I mean, yeah, that's a societal problem. I could do a 16-hour show on NIL, and that's bad. That is bad. By the way, I just saw today, Utah, every single one of their players got a brand new Dodge Ram truck. This is Utah. Boy, you have all these holier than thou people saying you're taking advantage of these kids, and colleges they're making an enormous amounts of money. Then guess what? Get rid of college football, make it a developmental league, but people don't want to do that because they want the tradition of Alabama and Ohio State and Notre Dame and so on and so on. Can't have it both ways. Free education the way it used to be, or don't, let them go be pros if they can be pros. They opened up a can of worms there, and the toothpaste ain't coming back. So you're 100% right, Jody, but that is not a good. That is not a good.
I just said it was reality.
Yeah,
and that's why you're never going to get these players to turn off social media, because it's a lifeline. And it's only getting bigger and wider and more spread going forward.
85, by the way, I just looked it up. 85 scholarship football players at Utah. Remember, this is not Alabama, Michigan. Utah, very good program, but Utah, $60,000 truck.
And fell from the ranks of the undefeated. And they got the trucks delivered this week after a loss. They opened up the season with some impressive wins. They give them the truck the week that they finally got beat.
All 85 of them, $60,000 trucks.
That's pretty good. Give them the nod, with the running Utes. All right, you got a couple of non-Utes here, McMullen and McDonald, hanging with you on Birds 365. We'll add another graying guy. Well, graying is better than non-existent for me and Johnny Mac. Scotty Grayson from Fox 29 going to jump in with us here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
John McMullen, Jody McDonald, your Birds 365 Mac and Mac guys. Scotty Grayson going to join us in just 1 second. But quick response to our stream here. Guys, again, crushing me for my hypothetical points of view. You know who else does hypothetical? The Philadelphia Eagles. In preseason, John told us it was for matchup purposes. That's why they did it. When they decided to move James Bradbury in and get him some experience in the slot, I think part of it was, hypothetically speaking, what happens if Avonte Maddox gets hurt? Oh, guess what? Avonte Maddox got hurt. Avonte Maddox is done for the season. So it's a good thing that they thought hypothetically to get Bradbury up to speed in the slot, just in case. So just for those of you who hate that fact when I go hypothetical, others do it too. The Philadelphia Eagles did it and got to benefit from it. All right, Scott Grayson, I'm sorry. I had to get that off my chest. You looking good, brother? How you been?
Oh, a little tired after last night, but who's not, right?
Yeah. Yeah. How about that?
Come on, they got it over in
What
2.5
October?
hours. What happened to 4 hours of punishment? What? 4 hours of pain, 4 hours of death. What was the quote from last year?
Yeah, it's like 4 hours of pain, something like that.
4
I don't
hours,
know.
yeah. 4 hours of pain.
2.5 hours. They got it over and done with last night.
Yeah, I was a little surprised when I left the ballpark last night at what time, but I was like, oh, I mean, I thought it'd be like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. It was not
old
quite
school, like I said. You know, those Yankees Red Sox games from 1999 are still going on.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, baseball's changed in that way, and that's a positive, by the way. Those games were torture to get to the you know, especially when you start at 8 o'clock, Scott, which is another thing. But 7 o'clock starts, I advocate as well.
Yeah, I'm all for that. The 6:40 during the season is
6:40.
Yeah. Get out
That's not going to happen either. So just like Eagles playing at 1 o'clock, we got one of those. We're not getting many of those. It'll be 1 o'clock out in the West Coast though with the Los Angeles Rams. A little bit better than I think people expected, Scott. Aaron Donald obviously is first and foremost on everybody's mind, and it doesn't come at the best time for the Eagles because they lose Cam Jurgens for at least a little bit. Suo Peta, how concerned? What's your concern level that the Eagles can hold up against one of the greatest defensive players of all time? And by the way, that's not hyperbole.
No, I mean, obviously he is every bit the legend that is growing about him for sure. And he is where I would start my game plan on offense in terms of saying, okay, we got to make sure he doesn't blow up everything we're trying to do. Right. So, right. You're right about Cam Jurgens. You're missing him. So how do you cover up for that? I mean, that's going to be a lot of what Kelsey's going to have to decide at the line of scrimmage, how they're going to try to block him wherever he's lined up and what the plan is of attack there. So, I think you're going to have to give help. You're going to have to be ready to chip at that guy. I also want to see some designed rollouts. I think the best way to mitigate some of that is to get out and just design rollout to get away from where the pressure is going to come. So I want to see if they'll get Jalen to be a little bit more mobile out of the pocket in that way on a designed play with his reads downfield from there. I think you have to definitely, sorry about that.
You got to find Nick Sirianni's going to pop in.
I know, right?
Yeah.
You got to. I think you definitely have to mitigate whatever he can bring, but you're going to have to do that with running backs. You're going to have to do that with bringing an extra lineman over to help chip. You're going to have to whatever you can to make sure you can get the ball downfield. But frankly, I also want to see the running game as a great way to try to take away some of what a pass rush gives you. So just stay away from Donald, because if you do that, I think you're going to have an opportunity for success.
All right. Will Nicholas Morrow have more sacks than the entire rest of the team combined this week, the same way he did last week?
Why was he getting those sacks, right? It's because the defensive line is doing their job. And frankly, like to Sean Desai's credit, he did bring in a couple of blitzes along the way, which allowed Morrow to get home. And you see Hassan Reddick got home, which was great to see too. I think he's going to start building some momentum. But Nicholas Morrow, I mean, you got to love what the guy brings. He doesn't, they always say, right, John, you've heard this too, if you think out there, you're going to be too slow. And what you see Morrow doing right now is just reacting. Reed Blankenship's doing a lot of that too. They trust their gut. They react. They don't stop and think about what they might be seeing in front of them. And I think Morrow's doing a much better job of that. And so I'm excited by what he's bringing them at that position. And I think that's going to be one of the keys this week as well is bringing those blitzes at the right time. Because look, what is Matt Stafford? Matt Stafford is not the most mobile quarterback, and he's also a little banged up right now. So to me, the game plan has to be to get in there as best you can and make that guy have to move on that bum foot and really try to throw off of it as well. Don't let him have time to find his receivers downfield, who may include Cooper Kupp this week. So, but Nicholas Morrow has been, I think, a great find, and I think the key is going to be to find ways to bring him at the right time on those blitzes with that pass rush coming in all different ways from the front four.
I'm going to disagree a little bit, Scott, from this perspective, and I want to give Sean Desai some credit here because I gave Brian Johnson credit for this. I think he's done a good job game planning for specific opponents. So, against Washington, very young quarterback, very inexperienced quarterback, they blitz more than I have all year. I think that makes sense. This week, it's Matthew Stafford. He's seen everything. And you mentioned the receivers, and Jody has been talking up Puka Nacua, and rightfully so. He's been tremendous as a rookie. If Cooper Kupp comes back, that's one of the best receivers in all of football. And you have the 27th ranked pass defense. You really want Matthew Stafford getting one-on-one shots with those guys against the Eagles secondary right now?
No, I don't. But I will say I think the Patriots kind of put out there a little bit of the blueprint that the Commanders tried to follow last week, which was get the ball out of your hand in 2.5 seconds or less, and it doesn't matter what the Eagles do. And Matthew Stafford, you're right, with his veteran capability, he will be able to do that. I think that's going to become more of a common thread against this team, is these quarterbacks are going to look to get rid of the ball quickly. Well, I think you got to try to make sure you can get them. To me, and I hear what you're saying. I think you're right about the veteran prowess of a Matthew Stafford. But with Puka and with Cooper Kupp out there, it was interesting talking to Slay yesterday. He pointed out, because of his history with Matthew Stafford, and he kind of hinted at something. He was like, if Staff's throwing you the ball, he likes you. Well, I mean, if he's not throwing the ball, no matter how good you are, he doesn't like you. And he's pointed out that he must really like Puka and what he's doing out there for the amount of times he's feeding him the ball. I think it's by necessity without Cooper Kupp there as well. But that being said, getting back to your point, I just want to make Matthew Stafford have to move right now at less than 100%. And if that means I've got to bring a guy up the middle to get him to move, then and not be able to get rid of that ball in 2 to 2.5 seconds because he doesn't have time yet to see his receivers break open, or I'm not saying blitz as much as last week, but I still want to see that be a part of the game plan because I really don't want Matthew Stafford sitting in the pocket and being able to pick it apart.
And by the way, Matthew likes Slay very much, so maybe he throws it to Slay.
That's what Slay was asked about that, and he said, "Yeah." He's like, "If he throws me one, I'm going to take it, but I don't expect him to give me a chance." Is more or less what he said.
By the way, that's only Slay's second best quote of the week. Did you see what Slay said about A.J. Brown getting a random drug test?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I did. Yeah. No, I did not. But I did notice that in his locker after the game on Sunday.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown, for anybody in the stream hasn't heard this yet either. A.J. Brown got a random drug test. That's why they call it random. You don't know when it's going to come. It's kind of at the discretion of the NFL, and it pops up, and you got to take the test, and you better go ahead and pass. So when asked about it, because AJ had to do it this past weekend after the game, And could it have something to do with the fact that he made 9 catches for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns? Well, those up on the grassy knoll, of course, are going to go, oh, that's why they're testing him. Slay fed into it. His quote was, you put up drug test numbers, you get drug tested.
Yeah.
How great is that? That's just a phenomenal quote.
I love Slay. Slay's so much fun to talk to.
Yeah, he is. Tremendous teammate as well. I've said, bro, I don't think people realize, because sometimes I've said it on the show a lot, Scott. Sometimes Slay comes across as goopy and not serious, and he obviously tries to lighten up the mood for everybody. But he's a great teammate, man.
You're right.
He rides and dies with his guys, and that even guys like Matthew Stafford, who he's been talking about. He's one of the guys and Jody could tell you, I've been a big Matthew Stafford fan for years. He was great in Detroit. People didn't realize it because the Lions were a disaster for most of his time there. Slay was one of the guys who thought, this guy's freaking good, man. He really, really sticks by his teammates. It's impressive. I will say that.
You got a sense of that even with the back and forth he had with Jake Elliott after the game in the locker room about second best athlete on the team.
Yeah. Everybody's second best.
Right back to him. He's like, I'm maybe second best, but I'm not number 2.
Yeah.
So you're right. And that just went to show, like, because sometimes those kickers, and they're placed in their own little box and they're left, alone. But it's Slay. You got that sense genuinely that that's not the way Slay feels about him or anybody else in that locker room.
All right. I already got everybody annoyed at me today because of my hypothetical. So I might as well annoy Scott Grayson too. Quiz for you, Mr. Grayson. There are 4 players in the National Football League so far this year that have scored at least 6 touchdowns. Can you name any of the 4?
At least 6 touchdowns. Well, you teased with hypotheticals.
Be thinking Miami 70 points.
Yeah. Tyreek Hill?
No.
Mostert.
Mostert is 1. He's got 7.
Former Eagle, by the way.
Stay with running backs in Miami.
Devin Atkins? What's the young
Devon?
kid?
I was told it was A-Chain, and then somebody said afterwards it's A-Chin or A-Chin, not A-Chain. He corrected everybody's pronunciation of it. The other one is Christian McCaffrey, who might be the best player in the National Football League. And one more is Kyren Williams, who is the running back for the Rams. He is one of only 4 guys in the NFL who has 6 touchdowns. Are we underselling the fact that the Rams might be able to have a balanced offense this week against the Eagles?
Well, it's a good question because the Commanders were able to do a better job on the ground than anybody else had against the Eagles in previous weeks. But the run game, the run defense is not something I'm really too worried about with this defensive line, with Jordan Davis the way he's playing, Jalen Carter the way he's playing, Fletcher Cox. I know he's on the injury report this week, and we'll see what happens with him. But he seems to have been having a resurgence. Then you talk about like Nicholas Morrow. If he's not blitzing, he's in there to come in as a linebacker. I'm not really worried about the run defense here. I'm more worried about Stafford and company outside than I would be about Kyren Williams. Now, I bet teams before them thought that way that played the Rams, and that's why he's had the success he's had. And that's certainly something you want to keep an eye on. But I trust this Eagles run defense. I really feel like that's where they really need to I think that's where they build their success from. If you can take one part of the game away like they did in the first 3 games, it makes it harder to do the other part. And I'd like to think they're going to be able to establish that run defense and make the Rams beat them through the air.
Now, shame on me because we're about 98 minutes into the show and I haven't brought up Fletcher Cox yet. So he had an epidural this week to deal with some back issues. May not play this week. We'll see how things progress. If he does miss any time, it's only supposed to be a game, but Fletcher's played pretty well this season for people who haven't noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, Marlon Tuipulotu shows up on the injury report with a triceps. And we talked about the Eagles' depth inside. They still have Jalen Carter. They still have Milton Williams. They still have Jordan Davis. They're better equipped than anybody else to handle losing some people. Even Kentavious Street. We might see more Kentavious. We might finally get to see more over Jomo. They have so many defensive tackles. You can keep going and going and going and going. But running game, no Fletcher Cox, no Marlon Tuipulotu. Does that make you a little bit more wary that 63 yards a game turns into whatever they gave up against Washington, about 100, could continue going into a negative direction?
It's something you don't want to overlook, which is why I mentioned Fletcher on the injury report, John, because he has been having a better year. And I think a lot of that has to do because of the young guys who are demanding more attention. For years, we were talking about Fletcher Cox getting double, triple teamed, right?
Yeah.
And now I think the other guys are getting the attention to where Fletch is a little more able to move and be a part of it. That's why I think he's having a great year. I think he's, getting all the success he deserves. Will they miss him? Sure. But to me, the problems against the Commanders and why that defense was on the field longer than it should have been because it couldn't get off the field. The third down conversions were a problem. The 2-for-2 on fourth down were a problem. The penalties called were admittedly by several players after the game ticky-tack, allowed drives to continue. Commanders got 5 first downs by penalty. Those are ingredients for allowing a team to stay on the field and wear you down. The Eagles this week, with the potential of not having some of those guys in the middle, I mean, the recipe for success is do what you do and then get off the field. Don't let drives linger. Don't, allow yourself to get worn down and get tired. And frankly, I think the offense as well needs to do some more time of possession control, allow your defense to get rest and be able to stop that run up the middle with those guys that may not be there. You're going to lean on the other guys a little more, right? So is it a point of concern? It's something you want to watch for. Certainly something to watch for with the inactives on Sunday, an hour and a half before when that comes out. But you're right. They do have depth there. They do have these guys who are chomping at the bit to get their turn. And frankly, you mentioned Milton Williams. I like watching him play. I think he's definitely, one of those guys that's kind of rising up a little bit and having some success. So I think there's opportunities for those other guys to step in and show why they were kept here and the key pieces in depth that they need to be. Again, I'm not as worried about the run defense this week. I seem to be more concerned about slowing down Stafford and company in the air.
No, I think that's fair, by the way.
I want to ask you about the Rams running game. We did. I want to ask you about the Eagles running game in this way. And we touched on it earlier in the show. Jalen Hurts was asked, has his mindset changed about him running the football? And his answer was one word, nope. When asked about it, both the offensive coordinator and the head coach have said, oh, yeah, we've talked to Jalen about being more smart and more protective and to go down when necessary and to slide. So we're getting a little conflict of answers here. Jalen says nothing changed. The coaches admit, oh, yeah, we asked them to change. We can see with our own eyes through 4 games and just by crunching the number, even if you didn't watch the game and you just looked at the box score, you go, oh, he's not running as much as you used to. If you watch the game, you've seen the slides. You've seen the give-ups. I'm not saying it's wrong. It might very well be right, but why the disillusionment between what they're saying? Does it matter at all? Is this something, and I said this earlier too, Nick Sirianni, when asked when Hurts signed the contract, oh, he's going to run less? Why would I take away his superpower? Well, you're taking away his superpower. Hey, come on, Nick, you've admitted to it. Why the disconnect with Jalen Hurts and his running game?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with I'll trust my eyes more than I will anything that any of them say. And my eyes tell me, Jody, like yours, he's going down easier. He's not taking on contact. You know what, though? I respect that. There's enough weapons on this offense. They shouldn't need him to have to do that. Now, is there a play in the game? Is there a key conversion that could come up where he's just got to maybe go try to get that and take some contact to get that first down? Yeah, and those are the spots where I want to see that, as you pointed out, superpower emerge. I get, if I were a Bills fan, I would be absolutely floored at how much Josh Allen looks to take on those hits, and it's unnecessary for a regular season game at times. Again, there are moments in a game where you may need to call on that, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. That's being a competitor, being a gamer. But yeah, you sign that contract. We see what Jalen Hurts' value is to this team. I don't think it's wrong for him to go down and avoid that contact. In fact, I like it. Run out of bounds 2, 3, 4 yards short of the marker. Unless it's a key third down, they need to get that on. That's where I need to see Jalen put that in. It's not as effective as it was last year. His threat of running the ball, I think teams have picked up on, is not what it was last year because he's choosing not to, and the Eagles have chosen to make that a point of emphasis. We're in week 4, week 5 now. As you get later in the year and, then maybe you start to do it in playoffs for sure. I would expect to see that become, but I also feel like teams are defending it better. I feel like there are linebackers that are reading it better. And I feel like they've got spies more often than not that are staying right with him and not biting on the RPOs. Their assignment is to stay with Jalen and they aren't moving. So I think that's also a contributing factor. But I just want to see Jalen when it needs to. That's when you do it. But man, I've seen Josh Allen so many times take those hits. I don't want to feel like that watching Jalen Hurts in the early in the second quarter on a drive take a hit where you go, oh, is he getting up from that? I don't think anybody here needs that, and I don't think the Eagles need to put him in that position. They have enough around him that they shouldn't need to worry about that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. Last season, people came in to the year saying Jalen Hurts has got to beat us. Let him beat us. This year, it's the exact opposite. We can't let Jalen Hurts beat us. And I think that's the difference. I really do. You mentioned all the spies. Everybody's playing zone coverage. All eyes are on the quarterback. So the minute he moves, you got that spy, bang, he's right there. As the Eagles deal with it better, maybe that changes as the season goes on. But I think it's that simple. People are saying, all right, somebody else has got to beat us. And that's the beauty of this offense. They haven't even gotten to Dallas Goedert, Scott.
Right. And I was talking to Dallas yesterday and just kind of asking you, does this offense have an identity yet? It's still a work in progress? And he said it's a work in progress. And I think that's true. And he hasn't been featured yet, right? And I think, frankly, we're starting to see what this offense will be. It's that Dallas gets 4 to 5 receptions a game. That's probably what it's going to be, unless somebody finds a way to shut down both Devontae Smith and, A.J. Brown. But they have the ability to be – I think that's what they do. I think early in games, they just sit back and say, how are you trying to beat us? And then we'll alter around that, which is why the running game suddenly, took off because teams were trying to shut down the receivers outside. And that goes back to it. You don't need Jalen Hurts to run the ball when you've got DeAndre Swift. And even I think Kenny Gainwell's coming along. I think he's going to improve even more. Because of what he sees Swift doing. I mean, the running style of DeAndre Swift is impressive. He's patient, he gets in the hole, and the vision in the hole is what really gets me because he can cut one way or the other and see where that's going to be. I think if Kenny could even pick up some of that, it's going to make him even better. But yeah, the Dallas Goedert game's going to come. He's going to have his 7, 8, 9 catch game. It's coming because as teams continue as A.J. Brown goes off, you just know they're going to have to start paying more attention or doing things to allow him not to be the guy that goes off. And it just opens up. I think that's what the identity of this offense has to be, is a roll with the punches offense. Whatever you throw at us, we can adjust and beat you in another way. They have what they need, and they just need to use it.
Last one for me, Scott, and I started this on Monday. Knew we were going to be breaking down certain aspects of the Eagles where they haven't yet achieved the standard they're looking for, but as Jalen likes to say, keep the main thing, comma, but they're 4-0. This upcoming week? Is it going to be the same thing here on Birds 365, but they're 5-0? Are they going out to LA and getting win number 5?
Yeah. I do feel like it's going to be one of those gut-wrenching kind of games. I think I saw they were a 5-point favorite. I don't know if they still are. I feel like I would take the Rams +5. I think this is going to be a close game. I just feel like Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, the return of Cooper Kupp. You got to imagine what that's going to do to that locker room if he does come back, to know he's out on that field. I just feel like this is going to be a bit of a grind. We talked about Fletcher Cox maybe not being in there as well. You're still going to have to – I don't know that you're going to have Roby ready to go here this weekend, so you're probably going to have Bradbury in the slot more again. To me, it just feels like they're going to have to grind it out. But that being said, because this team has won in so many different ways, because they've overcome adversity and still, as you pointed out, been 4-0 without playing their best football or anything really even close to it, yeah, I kind of feel like they do come out of here 5-0. But I feel like you're going to leave going like you did last week. A little bit of an exhale.
Now, bigger prediction, and it's at S Grayson Fox 29. Make sure you follow Scott there. Does a tremendous job with our buddy Breland Moore and everybody else at Fox 29. There's about 70,000, I think, for football in SoFi Stadium. How many of those 70,000 are going to be wearing green?
That's a great point. Boy, I'd love to go half, but I don't know it'll be quite that high. I think they're trying to get those.
It's going to be higher.
It's a popular road trip, as you brought up, John. Everybody loves to go to LA, and there's a lot of fans out on the West Coast. Some of my friends that I've kept in touch with.
And they're willing to give up their tickets, the Rams fans.
They are. You're right. That's a great question. It's going to be interesting to watch what the sound will be.
But
like.
wait, John, they're 2-2. They're actually the Rams. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But that'll be fun to watch. Those trips when you get on you get your first sense when you get to the airport, to get your flight, and you see how many fans are on that plane.
Yeah. How many go Birds? How many people recognize me? I got the hat. I'm not Scott Grayson, but I got the hat.
I gotta believe you try to fly incognito, John.
I do.
Tuck that hat down and
yeah.
He tries to hide it. It doesn't work. All right, Scotty G, thank you very much for coming on. We'll get you back in a couple of weeks. Appreciate it, big guy.
All right, always a pleasure, guys.
Thanks, bud.
Scott Grayson here with us on Birds 365 on almost every single site. Eagles 4.5-point favorite. Not quite the 5 that Scott said, 4.5. But that's on the road, flying cross country. It tells you a little something. Vegas is giving the Eagles their props. Not every sports website in the world with their power rankings is giving the Eagles their props.
And I'm so 70. I'm saying more than 30.
You're saying over 50%.
Over 50%. Over 50%.
The beauty of that is afterwards you can say whatever you want. Oh, I could tell it was.
Yeah, no, well, that should.
Unless nobody's there, or it's 85%.
No.
Anything in the middle, you can say it was 51%. It was 49%. You can make the argument either way.
There's a lot of. Pittsburgh. I remember went there and took over. San Francisco, it's much easier, but they completely take over. Everybody takes over that stadium. So Eagles fans take over stadiums, that other people don't. I can't imagine they're not going to take over that stadium.
And you're there for road games much more often than I am, but I've been to some where I tried to get a gauge just looking at the house, and I thought it was about 25 to maybe 1/3 Eagles fans. Then the game starts. Then you judge volume, and it's still louder. The Eagle fans are louder than the home, even though they only got 1/3 of the crowd. Not only do they
here's my prediction. The Rams got to go to silent count at some point.
Ooh, that tells you something. In your house, you got to go to silent count. Yeah, the other team's fans have pretty much taken over your building. All right, he's McMullen. I'm McDonald. Come back, put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
My name is Dr. Bruce Grossinger, and I'm the medical director of Philadelphia PRP and Stem Cell Institute. I'm reaching out to those who suffer from spine and joint pain. We use treatment methods that require no surgery, no scalpel, no drugs.
Running, walking, or whatever your desires are, Dr. Grossinger is where you need to come.
You can benefit from the same PRP and stem cell treatment as Wilbert Montgomery. Call us now at 610-222-5675.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
All right, Johnny Mac, we got to do a quick wrap here. What's going down today? Any further upgrade on injuries, you think? Will they get a full participant? We have a better gauge as to whether Mr. Roby be ready to go by Sunday. What do you think you get today?
I'm not expecting Roby to play this Sunday. That was kind of the thought process coming in. He's got to get back into football shape. I think they're earmarking the Jets in a week. I don't know how much that makes a difference, to be honest, but I don't expect him to play this week. Fletch is probably the biggest one to see where he's going to be, because he's going to try to play this week. And then Sidney Brown, because he's limited. I think Justin Evans was already full, so he's on track to be back. But Sidney's limited, so as he continues to go during the week, and that'll be big because I think you got to get through one more game with the slot plan that they have, which is Bradbury and Sidney. And either way, I don't think it's a great matchup this week if Cooper Kupp can play. And there's no guarantee Cooper Kupp's going to play. They just started his practice window. He wants to play, but they might be cautious as well.
And was limited in practice yesterday for the Rams. And if Fletch misses the game, Fletch has only missed last game of the season. Sit down, take the load off. Don't worry about it. We're going to the playoff games since 2017. Last time he missed a game. And we're in 2023. He's been a bit of an Iron Man for the Eagles, so give him his props. All right, we're back again tomorrow. Earlier this week, we had a Mike and Mike show. Both guests were Mike. We got a big D show tomorrow. We got a couple of Ds. Andrew DeCecco and Paul Domwich are going to join us. Johnny Mac, you back tomorrow?
Yes, I am. Let's first hour. We'll see about second hour. Got to go down to
second hour yet. Okay. So at least at the start of the show, it'll be Mac and Mac together again in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365. the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.